All right, so it's almost the end of January 2025. I've read a few books and some manga already, but I have to say that this book, which I just finished, The Vegetarian by Han Kang, this book is the best book I've read so far, best book of the bunch. This is an absolutely outstanding novel. I've been completely blown away by this book, and I just could not stop reading it, and I can't stop raving about it to friends and colleagues. So, yeah, The Vegetarian by Han Kang. This is the winner of the Man Booker International Prize in 2016. It's 2025, so I'm 9 years late to the party. And it was first published in South Korea in 2007 and then translated into English in 2015. So it took 8 years to get a translation of it, but it has won the International Booker Prize. And Han Kang, of course, now is a huge name in literary circles and in the publishing world. I got turned on to Han Kang by Tony from the Life on Books, A Life on Books podcast. So thank you, Tony. Really appreciate it. This has been just an absolute pleasure to read. I've absolutely fallen in love with this book. Definitely need to read more of Han Kang. So enough gushing. What is it about, and why do I think this book is so great? So this is the story of a South Korean woman. She's married. Name is, I have to get this right, Young-hee. Apologies to Korean speakers. I know I did not pronounce that correctly, but I'm doing my best. She has a pretty mundane life, very quiet person. Some would say even kind of submissive or subdued. And she has a strange dream one night and decides to become a vegetarian. And this choice causes a huge amount of tension in the family and with her marriage, and particularly between her marriage and the relationship between her mother and father. And it actually ends up resulting in a divorce and all sorts of, bad things that happen. Her husband and father really see it as an act of disobedience, and they're just absolutely baffled. Her mother, too, completely baffled. They just don't understand this, and they just keep forcing this issue, trying to find out why won't she eat, and they literally try to force her to eat the meat. Her sister sees it as an illness and kind of recalls that Young-hee was maybe never always very healthy and always had some strange habits and things like that. Her brother-in-law, so that's her sister's husband, he is kind of infatuated with Young-hee, and then this choice of hers to become vegetarian, he just becomes obsessed with her. He finds it a very erotic kind of thing, and it's very strange. And other people around it find it a strange habit, and it's seen as just like bizarre and disgusting. I should say before her choice to become a vegetarian, the husband recounts that Young-hee has started to pick up some what he sees as strange habits. For example, she doesn't wear a bra. So in the summertime, he finds that embarrassing. Other people are embarrassed because you can see her nipples sometimes. She wears comfortable clothing. She wears tracksuits, and she's wearing comfortable shoes. So like when they go out to a dinner, instead of her dressing up in a nice dress and a nice gown and high heels, she's dressed very kind of almost plainly and austere. And that's very strange for everyone there. And she continues to make these kind of strange choices. That's just kind of an overview of the book. One of the things that I really liked the book that I need to talk about before I can explain the rest of the book is the way that the book is structured, which I found to be really cool. It's definitely not a unique thing, but it's a little bit different. I would say it's not a traditional structure. It's basically split into 3 sections. There's no chapters or anything like that. There's just these 3 sections, and each section is told from a different character's point of view. So you get a different perspective on it, and it's all centered around this issue of Young-hee's vegetarianism and what does it mean and why is it causing all these other problems. And I felt like these three stories could really stand on their own as short stories, or could have even themselves could have been expanded into novels. So it's a very interesting choice from Han Kang to use that kind of structure, and I felt like she knew when to stop and shift the perspective at just the right moment, so that it's building tension, and then you're expecting some kind of release of the tension, and it just pivots, and the story doesn't necessarily start over, but it shifts. And so every time the perspective shifts, we also get a shift in time, and the story has kind of advanced a little bit. So it's a very, very interesting choice. I really liked it. I felt like it really worked really well. Obviously it did. It won the Booker Prize in 2016. So part one is told from the point of view of the husband, and it really focuses on how he views this decision, and how he first starts to worry it's going to affect like his job and his relationship with his boss and his colleagues, and then again with the in-laws and the family. And he kind of sets the stage and kind of dooms the whole thing, because he just is like baffled by it, and he's offended by it. He sees it as an act of disobedience, like I said before. He gets very angry about it. He's very confused about it. And he is using kind of his position as a very traditional male to pass judgment on this decision, and to also feel defied by the decision. Also in the first section, we get fragments of the dream and some of the other dreams that she has that have compelled her to become vegetarian and to continue with her vegetarianism. So the first section is really, really interesting. There's also a lot of like family dynamic, and the family is pretty toxic, pretty broken, pretty awful family, I have to say. Although the sister is portrayed as being quite caring and very concerned, and she's probably about the only person in the family that doesn't seem to be, out to fix Young-hee, so to speak. We also learn too, in the first section, there's some trauma on behalf of the father, and that may have sort of planted the seed for this dream to come up later in life, and then for her to have this kind of choice and decision. So that's the first part. The second part shifts then to the brother-in-law's perspective sometime later, and Young-hee is divorced from her husband. She's living alone. She's seeing a psychiatrist, so she's on some medication also, and is just kind of trying to just kind of like live her life, basically, kind of live a new life as a single woman. He is obsessed with her, and his obsession is about her beauty and her body, and he feels that she has changed since becoming vegetarian. He sees physical change in her, but also some sort of change kind of in her personality or her aura, and he sees her as kind of a mysterious figure that he wants to try to kind of understand. Again, very sort of toxic male perspective. He is an artist. He's kind of a failed artist, I guess, or an artist that just kind of never got his start. And so he conceives of this project, this art project, where he wants to paint her body with flowers and film it, which is like creepy, right? I mean, I guess there's an interesting section at the beginning of this part where he is watching a performance art piece of dance, and I guess dance and music and theater. And it's written really well. It's really moving. And he has this like, you can tell he as the character really does have a deep understanding and an eye for this type of art, and yet somehow he's never been able to get his own art before audiences and have some success. And I found that section to actually be really powerfully well written when he's observing this performance and how it affects him, and how it also kind of brings up this feeling within him that he still is kind of not quite adequate as an artist. So he conceives of this project. He's obsessed with her body, and she has a birthmark as well too that he's very obsessed with. And then he kind of iterates on the project and pushes it all basically into kind of like almost like a porn, where he wants to film her having sex with someone else who's also been painted. And during that time, how can I explain this without getting weird and pervy? It's a very weird and actually really disturbing and unsettling part of the book. But she reveals to him, Young-hee reveals to him that she's aroused because the partner that she would have is also painted with flowers. So then he paints his own body with flowers, and then they have sex, and then they get caught by his wife, which is her sister. It's creepy, and yet it's written very well. It's not pornographic, it's not titillating or anything like that, but it's written really, really, really well. It's just written really well. I found that this section too really critiques choice and agenda, and how people just really don't understand each other, even when they seem to be going in the same direction and wanting the same thing. People are wanting it for different reasons, So, particularly with regard to relationships and physical relationships and sex and things like that. From there, we go into the third part, which is told from the point of view of the sister. Her name is In-hee. I think that's pronounced correctly. Probably not. And she's been taking care of Young-hee. Young-hee is in a I guess you would say, mental health care facility. And it's kind of been decided that she has some kind of mental illness, and that her vegetarianism is part of that mental illness. And this part of the book gets very morose and very macabre, as the sister is starting to sort of question the nature of Young-hee's choices, and basically of kind of all choice and everything like that. And I feel like this section really drives home, in my opinion, what the book is really about, which is that it's all about choice, it's about agency, and it's about how far are you willing to go to stick with the choices that you make in your life, and what are some of the sacrifices that you might have to incur to stay with the choice that you've made. It's not really about the choice to become vegetarian. It's really about the choice to follow something that you feel you need to do, and that it might be something that you can't articulate or explain to others, but you just know instinctually it's what you need to do, or it's who you are, or it's where you need to go. And how are you willing to go all the way with that, and possibly sacrifice relationships, sacrifice your family, and things like that. To me, that's what it's really all about. Also, in this part of the book, Young-hee has kind of disappeared, and there's a lot of ambiguity about what's going on with her. I'm not going to give away the ending of it. I've given a lot of plot details. There's still a lot in here that I have not talked about, and I think that's what makes this book so great, in my opinion. It's a really short book, 183 pages. And she basically tells 3 stories about one central character's choice. And she goes all the way with it. She doesn't really hold back at all. There's discussions of family, society, of agency, of autonomy, sexuality, toxic masculinity, feminism. identity, all this amazing stuff, all these huge ideas, all packed into a very small and very short novel, which to me is just a commendable, absolutely commendable feat. If you can get all of that in less than 200 pages, you are a fantastic writer. You know, a lot of people, a lot of books can cover all that material, but you're looking at 600 to 800 pages, which can really be a slog to get through. And also, the prose in the book is really great. It's really compelling read. It really hooks you in from the beginning. The pacing of it is great. You get exactly what you need and nothing more. There's really no fat or gristle in this book. It's a pretty lean, really tight book. And yet there's enough in here to feel, you know, there's a lot in here to read and to infer, to read into, and you never feel cheated by it. You know, sometimes books are really tight and terse, but you feel kind of cheated. Never the case with this book. Just absolutely fantastic. I can't stop saying enough good stuff about this book. And obviously, a lot of other people thought it was good. It won the Man Booker International Prize in 2016. So obviously, it's a great book. And if you haven't read it yet, you need to read it. And if you have read it, maybe read it again. So there you go. Those are my thoughts on The Vegetarian by Han Kang. Really happy I read this early in the year. It's definitely a 5-star read for me, even though I've said I would stop giving books stars. I just did. So there you go.